good evening. You're watching The Money Show on ET now. We are back after that long Diwali break, and I hope all of you have had a great Diwali with your families, staying at home, of course, I hope. And let's kickstart the show. We are back to routine. We are back to normalcy. Well, not normalcy in every sense of the word, really, because we are still very much in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic that's wreaking havoc across various parts of India as well. Well, here's what we have lined up meantime on this episode of The Money Show. First up, as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic, unfortunately, is not exactly relenting. It's still around in India. Number of cases have been below 50,000 for the last 10 odd days, but unfortunately, there are still individuals, many of them, who are not able to survive the virus. And it gets even more troublesome if these individuals are the earning members of the family, the only financially active members of the family, because it really throws the household income into a lurch, especially when they're all dependents on that individual who has had a sad demise. But now is the time really where you have to pick yourself up, ask yourself the tough questions. Where is your next source of income going to come from? Do you have an idea of the assets and liabilities of the deceased? Some of it may be your right, some of it may be your duty to pay off as well. So assets, liabilities, all of that should be in order. Documentation, paperwork, all of that as well will have to be in order. And these are unfortunately some of the crucial tasks that all of you must get about doing, post the demise of an financially important member of the family. So we'll be discussing that on the show. Later on the show, we'll also be bringing on work policy bazaar for all of you who've been renewing your policies. You may have noticed that the premium amount has increased. What's the reason for that? And guess what? If you feel that you're not able to afford the premiums, well, because of the economic situation we are in, the IRDAI has introduced an option of paying your premiums on an EMI basis. So what you usually pay as a one lump sum payment, as an annual premium payment, guess what? You can break it up now. You can pay it off monthly, you can pay it off quarterly, you can pay it off semi-annually. You can take your pick. It will help alleviate some of that financial burden which usually used to come as a one-shot payment. So we'll be discussing all of that today on The Money Show. So first up, let me introduce now Mr. Anil Rego of Right Horizons. Mr. Rego, many thanks for joining us, and season's greetings to you and your family from all of us at ET Now. So to start with, the passing away of a family member can always be difficult, and it's even more difficult. The difficulties are amplified if that individual is somebody who, the rest of the family was financially dependent on, from whom the household income used to come in. So according to you, what are the important financial tasks one should get about to doing once a family member has passed?
So I think whenever you have an important member of the family who's passed away and who's also earning, it definitely creates some bit of financial stress, and many a times it is a little bit sudden, so it's not very organized, and you don't find documents proper. So what are the few things that one can look at? I think starting off first is the death certificate. It will be required for various requirements will be there for insurance, for banks, for almost everything you will require it. So you have to take multiple copies of it. The other part is to start looking at and try to assess what are the overall assets and liabilities. And so as part of this, you may need to sift through financial documents. Sometimes we found that it's not readily available in a file. It's not very organized, so then you may need to go back and try and look at all files. If you can get access to emails, that may be one way of looking at it. Maybe just looking at postal that also keeps coming on, any statements that come and just open it and have a look at it. Okay, so that is something that we need to look at and try and assess the overall assets and liabilities. Search if there's a will, because that's the other part. How do you distribute the amounts? Was there some thing thought of already? So if there was a will, and somebody comes forward saying that he's the executor of the will, etc., those are things to be sort of taken care of. Otherwise, you have to work on getting a succession certificate. Then check if there are any insurance policies. Okay, so all of it you need to start looking at, and then get to the action in terms of actually transferring each of them. You have to individually reach out to each of the financial institutions, even for properties. The registrar office, etc. There will be a lot of formalities that come with it, unfortunately. but the documentation one would have to sort of take care of, and start working transmission of all the bank accounts, the financial assets, filing claims for insurance policies, and not to forget also the liabilities. Unfortunately, sometimes there are liabilities which are there that we need to look at. The other part that sometimes there may be some, especially if it's untimely and somebody is working, there may be money which is with the office, either in terms of pensions, final settlements. There may be a life cover also that the office provides. So it's about getting all of them together. And last point that I would like to say is, start working on the tax filing of the person. Keep that in mind right through the process. So you will need to file returns in that particular deceased person's name, and till the date of death, you need to actually file it in that particular person's name itself. And for the rest of the financial year, the legal heirs, you need to file in their name. So the last but not the least, is the tax filing that would anyway come in as per the normal tax date. But since you have no awareness, about all the assets, liabilities, the investments, etc., it's important to sort of, put them all together and start, capturing all the transactions so that you would be able to file your returns.
So, that's largely on the whole documentation bit, on ensuring that, you get the claim to the assets owned by the deceased as rightful heirs, and then of course the liabilities bit as well, which could be even more crucial, which we will discuss later as well. Mr. Rego, the other pressing point is with respect to household income. It can get even more, varying for the family members when they, when the individual who has passed away is the only earning member of the family, and I'm sure, of course, the first step that these individuals who are left behind, would try to do is essentially look for another job, look for some sort of steady flow of income into the family by way of a job or a business. But apart from that, how can they essentially deal with the passing of this member in terms of finances? I mean, because making new investments in mutual funds, etc., perhaps could be out of the question, because you see the benefits of those only, like we say, right? You have to invest in mutual funds for the long term. So anything that you would advise that could sort of help them tide over?
Yes, so we need to look at it from various fronts. One is in terms of maybe what has been passed on by the family member itself, and hopefully if there is some surplus, then that is helping. If the assets are reasonable to take care of the family needs, then that is the basic. So you may need to start looking at insurance policies and assets. Ideally, you should look at some of the liquid assets. If you need some monthly income, you can also start taking a bit of a restricted monthly income. But at a time like this, it's very, very important also to step back and plan it for a longer term, because you don't want to be using up all the assets in a short period of time and then coming up with the challenge of how to manage it. So I think that one needs to step back. Ideally, if you can either do a financial plan yourself, or take on the service of a financial planner, you may be able to look at it over your longer term and then say, okay, do you have a deficit or not? So if you have a deficit, then you need to start looking at maybe some of the alternatives. Is there some alternative source of income that one can do on one's own, within the family members? Hopefully, if a family member is getting into a working age, etc., maybe the burden will be a little lesser. Okay, so we need to keep in mind also there are some family priorities are there. Maybe an important need like a children's education may sort of come up. So we need to look at it in a slightly broader perspective, and then take some of more difficult calls if required. Start looking at can I reduce my expenses? Should I need to go to a smaller house? And so some difficult decisions to take. And even should one, if a member is not working, should we start and try to look for something? Even if you are, let's say, not been working, is there some alternative source that one can sort of create? So I think first look at the assets and then see if there's a deficit, then start working on backup plans and a plan B sort of situation.
Let's talk now about the lifestyle changes as well that one may have to take on board. The points that you've mentioned, of course, would have them tied over, right? Like you mentioned, liquid assets, etc. But there is going to be that income deficit. So do you think the family members should brace themselves for any radical changes that they may have to make to their day-to-day living, to their lifestyle, etc.?
Yeah, like I said, so if there is a deficit in the assets after doing a financial plan, right, over the various needs of the family, including regular income as well as for various important needs like I mentioned, then one needs to take more drastic steps. And yes, you need to go back and see should I reduce expenses, and those can be right from looking at a different city to unfortunately maybe looking at different schools for the children. Whatever you can sort of reduce. Those are points that one should look at the income versus expenses and try to reduce that if it is an issue. The second part of it is can I increase my income? So look at various steps to sort of increase income, and those steps could be even if there's, let's say, a property by chance and there's no it's not let out, for example. Those are easy things to look at. But then start looking maybe for jobs which sort of suit family member, even if it means part-time. There could be small things that you take care, like tuition, or today a lot of opportunities have come up thanks to technology and being able to even on the food side, even if one is not qualified to take up more professional jobs, there are various income sources that one can start trying to look at, and take help if you're able to get a few people in the family to help. If there are some expenses like education, it's possible that some of them may sort of come forward. Reach out to friends as well. Today there are also ways of raising funds. There are crowd fundraising options there. So I think you need to just look at all of it in best possible way to tide over a difficult situation.
Absolutely. Let's talk now about the liabilities front or the debt front. Many of us, of course, have our home loans, personal loans, credit card bills, etc. that we are in the midst of paying down. But what happens then in case of an untimely death? Does it naturally come upon the heirs of the deceased who is liable to pay down his home loan? And let's take a home loan because it's the most common example, and it usually is one of those 20-year loans. So does it automatically go down as a responsibility of the heirs then to pay, to continue the payment of the EMIs of the home loan?
Yeah, so unfortunately it does, because you also get the benefit of the asset as well as the liability. Okay, so that is something that comes with it. Normally, the liability is lower than the asset, so unless, let's say, somebody is in a business family and you've taken more loans, etc. But if it's a home loan, typically you will find the asset value which should be higher than the loan value, and those are important decisions to take. Should I exit the property itself and repay the loan, or can I hold on for some time? The real estate market is not too great, so I would in fact say that if you can hang on and take some steps for the short term when sort of conditions get better, if again you have to take a decision like that. Yes, so that's definitely a point that we need to also consider the liabilities. You also have at times some people come across and say this person lent money to me, etc. And I think there I think the approach to take is to go back and see that do you have proper documentation for it. If that is there, then yes, but you should be careful that people are trying to misuse the particular situation, so you need to be a little careful about some of those as well. But liability is your headache, and if it's really bad and it's significantly higher, then maybe you can seek professional help, including a lawyer, etc. If they can see how to sort of protect you as well. So those are aspects to look at, because there could be some extreme situations which are not so good. So those are areas to sort of work on, and so one needs to look at the overall. And broadly, I think for most people, you should not have a problem because assets are higher. So in a worst case, one can sell the asset and sort of clear off the loan, or if it's higher, then start looking at somebody who's maybe specialized in some of the distressed situations, a planner who has some expertise around that, as well as you can talk to family, friends, and also take counsel of a lawyer, etc., to handle the situation.
Mr. Rego, you know what, I'll request you to stay on with us. Ladies and gentlemen, meantime, I hope that you've taken notes from what Mr. Rego as well is talking about. It's a very practical reality of life that all of us have to, sort of deal with heads on, with pragmatism. So I hope you've been taking notes whatever Mr. Rego has been saying. But yeah, we'll continue this conversation. We'll take on board some questions and queries as well from our viewers. You can write into us on the Money Show at etnow.tv. We'll take a very short break on the show. You're watching the Money Show on ET Now. We're in conversation with Mr. Anil Rego, and he's given some very interesting insights on, how you can deal with the loss of a family member in terms of, your finances. It's an extremely crucial piece of information, especially if, the rest of the family was dependent on this individual for the household income. Okay, well, if you have any questions or queries meantime on this topic or on any other personal finance related topic, you can write into us. Our email address is themoneyshow@etnow.tv. I'll repeat, themoneyshow@etnow.tv. Well, for now, let's take on board some questions and queries we've already received. Abhijit Pati writes into us saying that he's got a portfolio of roughly about 5 mutual funds. The first is Axis Blue Chip Fund, second Parag Parag Long Term Equity, Murray Asset Emerging, SBI Banking, and PSU Kotak Dynamic Fund. He's got a 2,000 rupee SIP going on in 5 of them. So 2 are debt funds and the other 3 are equity funds, and he's also got a national pension scheme or an NPS going on of 60,000 rupees per year. He's only 30 years old and he wants to know if his portfolio looks good, and if he thinks that with the help of this portfolio where he's got about 10 grand going on in an SIP, will he be able to accumulate 20 lakh rupees in 10 years for his child's education, and also if he can accumulate a good corpus in NPS or VPF or Voluntary Provident Fund for his retirement. So I think in his mind he's made these buckets. He's using the mutual funds for a child's education, and the NPS is essentially for his retirement, where he's putting a he's just putting about 60,000 rupees per year, definitely a much more modest sum. Mr. Rego, what do you think of his his investments in these funds? Do you think it's the right choice? Do you think it's less? Do you think he should up it? Anything you would recommend?
Yeah, first of all, I must congratulate that at the age of 30, he's doing a fantastic job. He's diversifying well across various avenues. He's also bucketed, saying that this is what I will take care, how I will take care of my child's education, this is how I will take care of my own retirement, and both of which are very long-term needs. So I think congratulations to you. And within that also, choosing a very, very good set of funds. So I don't have any suggestion to make on changing the fund. I think he's doing a fantastic job. A few things that I will just add on, to complement. I think over a period of time we can possibly add gold, so that can come in over a period. But right now, we can just keep it where it is. You can also consider global equity funds. Okay, there are feeder funds, which you can also add if you want to add some bit of diversification. On his requirement of say 20 lakhs in 10 years, it is definitely possible with the current monthly contribution of 10,000 rupees a month. The only point to keep in mind is as one comes closer to a requirement, one may need to start reducing the risk. Okay, so for example, if you have equity and when you come to the almost like from the 7th year, start moving it to balanced and maybe dynamic asset allocation funds, and in the last 1 or 2 years, move it to completely debt, so that you are covered and not getting impacted by market volatility. And so that is, I think, what he can do. On the NPS, he's again doing a good contribution there. The NPS is a low-cost option and should do well in the long term. So it's a good thing to do, and especially up to 50,000 rupees per annum. There's also a tax deduction that you get. So he should utilize to the extent of 50,000 rupees. The rest of it he can choose to add on to some of the mutual fund. If he wants to create some liquidity. So I think both of these are fantastic ones. But as you go through in your journey, right now you're starting off with 10,000 rupees a month. I would suggest, at least for inflation, keep increasing it in a small way on a yearly basis, as your finances sort of improve. Because our experience is that, we may start off with looking at 20 lakhs in 10 years, maybe that may go up with inflation and the compounding, etc., from what it is today. So you just need to maybe look at increasing it to take care of inflation.
All right. Okay, so I think largely Mr. Rego seems to be giving Abhijit's portfolio a thumbs up. Very quickly, let's take on board one more query. We have Amulya Kadri writing and saying he's also 30, employee of a PSU. He's investing in mutual funds for the last 3 years through SIPs. He's got a list of 7 funds which is appearing on your screens, and he notes that ABSL Frontline and HDFC Midcap are both underperforming for the past few years, and he wants to know, Mr. Rego, if he should switch over to another fund. He can continue with his investments for another 5 years. He's a long-term mutual fund investor. Plus, he also has his EPF, which is statutory. He has his LIC going on. He wants to know overall, what do you think of his portfolio? His fund is, of course, appearing, on your screen. So, Mr. Rego, your recommendation?
Yeah, so again, for a 30-year-old, I'm always, thrilled to see, such good work done. And it looks like Anil is also tracking his investments well. So he himself has, realized that ABSL Frontline Equity and HDFC Midcap have not been doing as well. Of course, ABSL Frontline Equity maybe has sort of started improving in performance, and you find funds typically, follow certain cycles. And I would believe that we are coming to a changing cycle going forward. So from here, I may just be cautious about changing too many funds of the past. Okay, but however, keeping in mind that there has been some bit of underperformance, one would suggest that we consolidate with some of the existing funds. He has a number of funds, so maybe asset large cap is something that he can sort of use as an option there. Even HDFC Midcap, I think he can hold on and add to some of the existing funds. But the point is, not just to take very ad hoc decisions. I think watch it for 1 or 2 years, because I think if we are closer to a turning point as I expect, then you may find, if you find some of these funds like HDFC Midcap improve, then one can sort of leave it, but otherwise we can move it. And what an alternate fund that he can do for stopping the HDFC Midcap, he can look at current performing fund like DSP Midcap fund, so that he's ensuring that if the underperformance continues, it's not impacted because new investments are happening in a better performing fund. But at the same time, track the past funds which are underperforming, and then maybe take a call over a period of time if you don't see it sort of moving up and beginning to improve.
All right. Well, Mr. Rego, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show and, helping our viewers out with their questions and queries, and of course sharing your view on a very important topic. We've still got a lot of queries going, but we're out of time. Don't worry, folks. We'll be here all week on The Money Show to get your questions and queries answered. Keep writing in and keep writing to us on what are the topics you'd like us to touch upon on The Money Show. Let me repeat our email address once again. It's themoneyshow@etnow.tv, and you can catch all our episodes on ET Now's YouTube channel under The Money Show playlist. For now, we'll take a very short break.